everybody. This is What's Up for Your Children. And as we start tonight, we're actually going to start where we always start, which is in the heart. So, yeah, with all the lots of energy moving between now and the 21st of December and then on through the holidays. So, let's just kind of stabilize this for just a bit. So, if we'll breathe into the heart space. And we're going to go ahead and exhale out 360 degrees. And let's do it again, deep, deep into the heart space, just like it's the only place the energy can be breathed into. It's right into the center of the heart. And exhaling it out 360 degrees. And this time when we breathe that energy into the heart, we're going to exhale it out to all of the children within us, all of our inner children. Sometimes this is the first time that those inner children have the opportunity to have that kind of blast of love come right at them. There we go. And let's breathe in again. And this time we're going to exhale that love out to all the children that we know and adore, support, live with. Beautiful. And then one more here. Let's breathe deep, deep, deep into the heart. And this time as we exhale that energy out, we're going to breathe that love out. Breathe our presence out to all of the children on this planet. All the way out. Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. So whether it's the children within the adults on this planet, or whether it's the physical children by age on this planet, all of those children are benefiting from and needing a little bit of support right now. Yep. So when you're ready, we can open our eyes and we can get started with anything that you guys would like to speak about. Just as we're getting ready to have those questions come into the chat, what I want to say first is that, this time period between the 14th and the 21st is, from a lot of the kids that I've been talking to so far, is a really monumental time, is the best way I can say it. There is so much energy breaking up. There's so much of the old that is breaking up that I've never really seen, probably in my 20 some odd years of practice. So many children being able to find a way in deeper into their bodies than they've ever been able to find before. And a lot of that has to do with what's gone on throughout all of 2020 and all of the, I'll say, more shadow information that's kind of come to the surface. And we've got a large humanity making a lot of different choices now than they've made before, which is wonderful. But that very breakup of that old, I'm going to say harder, more maybe patriarchal kind of energy is really opening a space for these kids to anchor here in a way that they just haven't been able to before. And it's been pretty exciting, with some of the clients I've been working with, especially over the last few months, to just see them showing up in ways that, yeah, it just does my heart good. So anyway, yeah. Sharon, do you have anything?
Can you speak to soul lineage of my grandson Michael Jr. and mother, father Michael and Michelle? I am curious as to that all comes down the pike. Thanks.
So soul lineage or biological lineage, there are two different things.
Soul lineage is what was put in.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to address it two ways because we can have a soul lineage, um, and that lineage has to do with the bigger parts of ourselves and why we come here and what contributions we can make. And of course, that has an awful lot to do with some of our newest populations. There's also more of a, let's say, biological or familial lineage. And that lineage is really made up of the imprinting that kind of, in many ways, can either foster a greater awareness of our soul lineage or diminish the awareness of our soul lineage. So, and soul is not quite the right word, but we're going to use it just for tonight anyway. So, first, let me speak to soul lineage, and I'm going to speak to that on a more general level, and then I will speak to the biological lineage more specifically. So, at a soul lineage level, we do have so many children who are showing up now that belong to a, I'm going to say, like a monadic group that is here to not just create change or bring about change, because a lot of us were the ones that were here to do that, but a lot of these new kids are here to manifest that change. They're here to embody that change, to show us what it's supposed to look like, to show us how to move forward, and also then to anchor that energy um, through that soul lineage that they've come from. So, and then on a biological level, uh, familial lineage. Hold on a second. So, um, so we can look back through our family of origin. I'm going to keep this a little general too. We can look back through our family of origin, and we can look at, say, our grandparents, our parents, ourselves, and then our children. And we can see how certain energies continue, right? Certain patterning has been continued. So let's say that anger, and or let's say that's an emotion that we've noticed throughout the lineage. A lot of times as that comes down through a familial lineage, when it gets to some of these new kids, not so much when it gets to us, we still embodied a lot of that, but when it gets to a lot of these new kids, they're saying, nope, sorry, I'm not processing that familial lineage. I'm going to reflect that information back to you so that you can see what it is. And then you're the one that is, let's say, responsible for cleaning up that particular piece of the lineage. What's really cool about this is when the kids reflect that back to us, let's say, then, and we, instead of making them wrong for it or making it bad for it, when we actually take personal responsibility and we start um, being present to those patterns that have continued throughout our lineage, we start to break that information down. We start to transmute that energy. And the best transmuter of that energy is to meet that energy with love and compassion, right? Especially if it's a lineage pattern, we have a tendency to beat ourselves up for a lineage pattern where there's really no reason to beat ourselves up for it at all, because quite frankly, it was something that was just passed on to us. It was not our fault that it got passed down through the lineage. It is, however, our responsibility. And by that, what I mean is it's our responsibility to take the reflection that the child is offering us go into ourselves and to that particular pattern and have deep love and compassion for that pattern. And if you do that, you'll notice that that pattern just seems to wash away, seems to diminish very quickly. And as it diminishes, you'll notice that your children are no longer reflecting those kinds of lineage patterns. The only reason they're reflecting it in the first place is so that kind of the buck can stop with you. So I hope that's helpful. I know it wasn't a direct response to your child in particular.
All right, next question. Can you talk on the transition from highly sensitive child to highly sensitive adult? This daughter is feeling the pressure of being aware she does not fit in, does not want to fit in, and at the same time wondering how she will manage as an adult on her own.
Right. Yeah. So this is such an interesting question. And I think if you had asked me the same question even a few months ago, I might have answered it a little bit differently. Probably each one of you, I know I myself have made that transition from energetically sensitive child to uh, energetically sensitive adult. And so probably have each and every one of you. What I will say is that typically when we are energetically sensitive children, um, we only really know that we're energetically sensitive because some adult somewhere is telling us over and over again, you're too sensitive. That's too much. So we have this preconceived idea that um, well, no, not a preconceived. We have an imprinted idea that or conditioned idea that our sensitivity is a negative, right? And more often than not, the people who are telling us that we are quote unquote too sensitive, or sometimes even too aware, are people who are really challenged themselves in feeling what they feel and knowing what they know, right? So, so as we make this shift from energetically sensitive child to energetically sensitive adult, we're kind of having to reparent ourselves, right? To remind ourselves that that sensitivity is and always has been a capacity or a strength, not a weakness. And for those who are already adults or who are moving into their adulthood with their sensitivity, we really do have to reparent ourselves. And for those of us who are adults who are supporting an energetically sensitive child as she moves maybe into her teens or into her 20s and is concerned about that sensitivity kind of wreaking havoc on her life, we really need to remind this these children that that has always been a capacity, right? It's always been a capacity. And and what I want to say is when you say something like that to a child who's energetically sensitive, sometimes they can't hear it at first. They've been so bombarded with the idea that that that's a challenge, and or they've had experiences in their own life where it is extremely challenging to be energetically sensitive or energetically aware. um, but to whatever degree we can support those who know more, those who feel more, those who simply are able to see maybe beyond the veil and really honor that within them, she'll make that transition with um, with much more ease and grace. So we have to appreciate and admire that energy, that awareness, that capacity, and we need to remind each other and our children over and over again that it is a capacity. So I hope that helps.
All right, so next question. Our son has been looking up and away with little eye contact recently, almost as if he is looking for confirmation from it, usually at the ceiling in the center of the room whenever he is in the house.
Yeah. Oh, I love this part. So yes, in my own experience anyway, really thousands of kids at this point saying the exact same thing, that when they are paying attention to something else other than the physical environment, in many cases they are in fact looking to and learning from other energies, other beings, other realities, other dimensional kinds of experiences. And it's all very real. I used to have a little boy a long time ago it was back when I was a speech language pathologist, and he would not be able to like name certain, I was asking him to name certain things, pictures, animal pictures at one point. Couldn't name them to save himself if I was just, and he kept looking up in the corner of the ceiling as well, or corner of the room. And I finally asked him, I said, "What's there?" And he said, "Man." And I said, "Can the man help you with the pictures?" And he looked it up again, and he said, "Yes." And so he went up, he bounced on the bed for a while, he looked up in the corner, and then he came back down on the floor. We're flipping cards, and he got every single one of them right. So, so one of the things that I want to say is there are all of these different dimensions and levels of energy. And just because we as adults cannot see what the kids see does not mean that they are not seeing something, and um, and not being encouraged or supported by something. So ask questions. It's like, "Oh, I notice that you are paying attention to something up in the corner. What's there?" And even if they're not verbal or can't communicate with you what they're seeing, I guarantee that they will feel your curiosity, that they will be interested in the fact that you're asking any questions whatsoever. So yeah, I would go right there. State the obvious. I notice that you look away. I notice that you're looking for verification or validation from something. Is that true? Is there something there? I'd really like to be able to know more about what's there. The moment you go into curiosity, the moment you'll start being really amazed at what you can have access to through your children. It's pretty fun. That's when things get really fun.
My daughter's OCD seems to be getting worse, and she's so despondent and depressed by it all. She's high functioning and constantly questions her existence. Is there anything I can do to help?
Mm. Let me see. Um, well, that OCD behavior is absolutely a reflection of the collective OCD behavior that is going on, or at least in this case, is what she's showing me. And sometimes just reflecting that back to her, sometimes just saying to her, you know, and again, I'm all for saying to a child what we're noticing. A lot of times when a child has a challenging behavior, we try to ignore it or pretend like it doesn't exist, whether it's the child looking at something that doesn't appear to be there, or an OCD behavior that's getting stronger and stronger. So first and foremost, just honestly, I notice that this OCD behavior is getting really, really strong. And I also notice that it seems to be getting stronger at the same time that things seem to be getting a little crazier out in the world. I wonder if that behavior has anything to do with how everybody else is feeling out in the world. And just leave it for her consideration. and her contemplation. Sometimes I've said something like that to a child and they say, yes, that's exactly what it is. I feel like I'm feeling everybody else's stuff. And oh my gosh, it's driving me crazy. And, they just, but they've never had the opportunity to have anybody reflect back to them that it might be something that they're feeling that is more than just their own personal experience. These kids know more than anybody else on the planet just how interwoven and interconnected we all are. So sometimes just presenting it like that can make really all the difference in the world. All the difference in the world. And that despondent energy that she's feeling, again, collective. And sometimes when the child understands, or at least even hears the parent say, hey, I'm not blaming you for this increased OCD. I'm not putting that on you. I'm assuming that, again, that there's some capacity here and that you're picking up something that you have the capacity to pick up that others don't. Sometimes just shifting the energy of it like that can create a lot of relief. That said, when somebody is, um, if that kind of energy doesn't shift it and there is another level or degree of despondent energy or depression, and or of course those things need to be looked at in other ways, but sometimes just shifting the focus. A lot of times children are OCD because they are dealing with vast volumes of information and energy flowing through them all the time. And I guarantee that if any one of us had that much information coming through, we would be trying to navigate and negotiate our reality in order to deal with everything that was coming through. So even the strategies that she's using, that are showing up as OCD behaviors, that's a strategy that she's using to navigate all of that energy. And so, again, we typically see OCD as something that's wrong or bad. And we want to turn this around for our kids and say, wow, you must be negotiating an awful lot to have all of these rules and regulations for yourself in order to make it through your day. We want to turn it into a capacity instead of just assuming that something's broken or wrong. And that can really change the dynamics of how any child with OCD feels about themselves, because they've been taking it on as if it was something, quote unquote, wrong with them, that nobody else is involved with that. And it's just simply not true. There's a greater capacity that we want them to be made aware of. So.
This applied to two moms. So this other mom says she knows it is collective and it makes her, this daughter, extremely mad. So
Yeah.
we're talking about two different daughters here.
Okay.
And she says she knows that her daughter is very aware and I speak on it openly to her, but she does not get that same from her dad. Can it be? That's the question.
Right. So, again, I'm going to answer this a little differently than I probably would have a few months ago. So we can have a tendency to have a certain language that we use towards our children that maybe our spouse or partner or grandparents or other people don't use with the children. And so what I want to say about that is a child is naturally and organically going to gravitate toward the adults in their life that understand, right? So even if one parent is saying something that is even the opposite of the other parent, the child naturally and organically is going to gravitate towards the one that understands. And as long as that parent is not making the other one wrong, right? That child will feel really comfortable coming and sharing anything that might need to be shared. Um, no child wants to be wants to kind of be between one parent and the other parent. No child really wants that. So, and I'm all I want to say here is, and it's happening so much right now because a lot of people are in a lot of close places, and a lot of people are noticing things about spouses and about their environments that they never noticed before, and or they've noticed it, even if the it's an ex-spouse, or even though it might be the child going to one household and another household. Two things I'll say. One, please, please, please make sure that you continue um, to reflect back to your child what you're noticing about them. Ask them how you can be of support in that process. And two, make sure that regardless of what you perceive the other parent saying or doing, right, that might not be quite up to your standards, I would simply reflect back to the child what you notice. I notice when you hear this, you seem to feel this way. I notice when you hear this, you seem to feel this way. So just make it about awareness for the child instead of making it about, right, good parent, bad parent, or, right. So it's all about awareness because we've got so many energetically sensitive and aware children on this planet. We're all going to be becoming more energetically and sensitive and aware as we move through this transition point, let's say. And so we really do have to learn how to navigate this energy. We really have to learn. And the best way that a child learns how to navigate that energy is to have somebody who can lovingly and compassionately reflect back to them what they're noticing and ask a lot of questions. Yeah, ask a lot of questions.
The son is having a continually hard time with hitting his chin. Just curious how to help him. I believe it's that it still hurts my wife and I to see it and hard to ease my emotion when seeing it.
Yeah, yeah, that it's so true. So so when your child is self-injurious, let's say, very frequently that will be a signal to something that has been hurt, injured within ourselves, right? So let me say this piece first, and I want to kind of put a little caveat on this. So let's say a child is self-injurious. He's hitting his chin over and over again, and maybe he's really pushing against that. So the very first thing is we have an energy that naturally and organically comes up within us in the very moment that we see our child hurting themselves, right? And so when we see that child hurting themselves, there's some little child within us that is also remembering that hurt. Yep. So on the one hand, we want to make sure that we have deep love and compassion for that part of ourselves that feels like it has been hurt. Yep, it feels like it has been wounded. We don't have to tell a story about it. We don't have to try to figure out who did what to whom. It's just in that moment, there's this deep heartache, there's this deep sadness that you're witnessing your child be self injurious, right? So we really want to go inside and be present to that experience within us. The caveat is if you have a child who is self injurious, in and the moment that you're noticing that self-injurious behavior, sometimes it's not just a hitting on the chin, but sometimes it's a throwing a head against something that's hard, you know. So first, we need to address the physical components and the safety of that child, right? We want to navigate that first. But please don't just navigate that energy and stop the behavior or attempt to redirect that behavior and just leave it at that. If you just leave it at that, it's very likely that that behavior comes back as another loop. So once you've been able to, kind of redirect that energy, and again, things like, I'm going to hold you, I'm going to hug you, we're not going to, we're going to do this instead of that, or redirecting of that energy. Let's do this instead of this. You're giving him options of what to do other than what he's doing. That's in the physical moment. But later on in that day, pay close attention to how it made you feel that you were witnessing that, because I guarantee there's an emotional piece that wants to be soothed within you. And when that energy gets soothed, it's also very likely that your child will begin to reflect that soothing. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, first things first, though, it's redirecting. And one of the things I'll say about redirecting that energy, always better to say, instead of don't, especially for a little one, especially if you're talking about a 5-year-old, much better to say, let's do this, or hand him something that he has to hold on to so he no longer can, have that position. Much better to redirect him into what you want him to do than to tell him stop it or don't do it, right? Little people don't hear they don't understand negation. So when you say don't run, don't jump, don't hit, they hear run, jump, hit, because they don't understand the negation piece, or they haven't yet processed that. Yeah.
Let's see. Son seems to lean towards a limited amount of food options.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything the father can do?
Yeah, it's again, none of this is just a quick fix by any stretch, but what I will say is there are some things that are, hold on a second. Yeah, okay. So this is how I would answer this in a variety of different ways depending on who's asking the question. So what I want to say here is that there are children in general have a tendency to have a fairly limited palate. If you go back to your own childhood, I know in my childhood, macaroni, cheese, pizza, the basics that kids kind of all enjoy. So if you take yourself back to your own childhood and to the palate that you were interested in then, right? What you were interested in eating, your child's choices are probably not that far off. Yep. And so in some ways there's a biological, emotional, energetic link right there. So we also know that if somebody sits in front of us and eats something as if they are just in love with it, I used to have to do this with my kids a lot. It's like they had certain things they wanted to eat. And so if I sat there and ate broccoli, oh, I hate, yeah, okay, you got to eat your broccoli, you got to eat your broccoli, trying to get them to expand that. They're like, they're not just reading, they're reading my face, they're reading the push of the energy to expand, right? So let's make it as natural as possible. possible. So when you sit down to have a meal with them and they have whatever they have, you're going to have something else. And when you have something else, make sure it's something you really like, that you authentically like. And as you sit there and enjoy it, right, you're naturally going to create a curiosity. What is that? What does it taste like? What is, why do you like that so much? Right? You're naturally and organically going to create that curiosity. Kids pay much more attention to how we actually feel about something than they do about what we say about something. So if it's authentic, that you are interested in more, then it's more likely that your child will be interested in more, right? The moment that we say over and over again, no matter what it is, that's wrong, your limited desire for, just these foods, that's somehow wrong, or you're somehow broken because those are the only choices, that immediately squelches that exploration, right? Whereas if you're sitting right in front of them and enjoying something, it might take 2 or 3 times, but my guess is at some point you're going to say, "You want to try it?" And they're going to go, "Yeah, okay, I'll have a little bite. Yeah, I'll try it." And at least you're expanding it that way. Um, yeah, I hope that's helpful.
All right, we're out of questions.
All right, cool, cool. Okay, so I just want to check in because I want to reiterate something that I said. I mean, we've we can have a tendency to look for a quick fix for something, and I wish there were quick fixes, but we're parenting. We're we're parenting, and we're not only physically parenting children, but we're parenting ourselves through this process. And somebody asked about a book earlier, and I was joking with somebody else. When I was growing up, we had all the books on, how to parent. The good parent does this, the good parent does that. But now we're in a whole different ball game. Um, we're not only parenting, but we're also having to understand energy. We're having to understand much more subtle realms of information. And when we understand those more subtle realms of information, we naturally and organically begin to parent or support the children in our lives in different ways. But there's no way that we can notice those nuances externally unless we're noticing them internally, right? So we really want to pay attention to, how do we feel? How do our children and their behaviors, whatever those behaviors might be, how does that actually make us feel, right? And when we are loving and compassionate to how it makes us feel, we in turn become much more loving and compassionate towards whatever that behavior is. One of the things that we really want to try to avoid is assuming that the child's behavior, whatever it is a wrongness. Yeah. And a lot of times the reason we project that onto our children is because we see our children hurting themselves, or we see our children having OCD behaviors, um, or any kind of behavior, and we immediately go back to ourselves and we kind of make ourselves wrong as parents. We're immediately saying to ourselves, "I'm a bad parent. Everybody's going to know I'm a bad parent because this my child has these kinds of behaviors." This is something that we really want to catch as often as possible, because quite honestly, nobody intentionally passes anything on to their children, just like your parents did not intentionally necessarily pass anything on to you, right? So so we really want to have some deep love and compassion for ourselves as parents. And when we do that, you're going to start noticing that your children, again, they're paying more attention to how we feel about ourselves and what we're projecting energetically than what we say. So when we're loving and kind and nurturing to these parts of ourselves that bubble up, they automatically notice and start picking up the capacity to be loving and kind and nurturing to those parts of themselves that they don't feel like they're getting quite right either. Yeah. And so we want to be as nurturing and kind to ourselves as we possibly can. It's so important right now. Nobody's broken, nobody's wrong. Everybody is conditioned, everybody is imprinted to one degree or another. And it's nobody's fault, but it is everybody's responsibility to meet that part of themselves with as much love and kindness and tenderness as they possibly can. Even if you don't believe it at first, pretend, right? Pretend. Because it'll catch steam after a period of time. Yeah. All right. I hope that's great for you guys tonight. Thank you very much for being here. And I guess I will see you next time. All right. Bye. Lots of love, everybody.